All right, it's 4:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. And stand if you're able for the flag salute.
Sorry, out of practice a little bit here, everyone. Our FCCLA group traveled to the national event in Orlando, Florida. And so what I have here is from one of the advisors, and in this case, it is Maggie Jo Usini, a teacher at the high school and also the advisor for FCCLA, with a little bit of report back on how they did there. Selah FCCLA has returned home with fantastic leadership development experiences, networking opportunities, and a host of awards. Our 14 members who traveled to sunny Orlando, Florida, participated in various STAR events, skill demonstrations, and challenge tests. We are particularly proud of 2 members who are recognized for their commitment to national programs. Sophia Terrell and Gigi Gamache were honored as Career Connection National Program Runners-Up, receiving a $500 award. Next is a young man that we've spoke about a lot over the past year. Parker Casey had the unique opportunity to sign his letter, his intent to say yes to FCS during the signing ceremony, and was later celebrated as one of the top 5 national members of the year finalists and received a $1,000 prize. Unfortunately, Parker was not the top, but still a huge shout out to Parker. And moreover, a former Selah CTE and FCS teacher, Kathy Hendricks, was awarded the National Lifetime Achievement Award. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. And then she listed all the students, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them. Olivia Eisman, level 4 apparel, fashion design, and construction, national champion in the challenge test area. Skill demonstration, Claire Richards. We know Claire, level 3 impromptu speaking, national champion. That would make sense based on what we see of her as well. STAR events, Sarah Richards, level 1 chapter in review display, gold national champion award, and Parker Casey, level 3 say yes to FCS gold national champion. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It seems like every student that went received some type of national recognition, whether it be a silver or a bronze. So obviously our students are not with us, and Maggie Jo not with us tonight, but I'm hoping that maybe during the August meeting that they come in and share their experiences and give a little bit more information in regards to how they did there. Now, obviously, I think you can see that they did very, very well. So congrats to our students and to our advisors and to Kathy as being recognized as National Lifetime Achievement Award. That's my first one. And the second one is not on the agenda, but I think that most of you know that Jennifer, who has been with you and me for the last 3 years, this will be her last board meeting tonight. So Jennifer, thank you very much for all that you have done for the board and for the district as a whole. I think you now realize from over the last few months that how much you mean to everybody, personally, to all of you, to all of us, to our community, to the school staff, and most importantly, to our parents and students. So thank you very much again. And with the transition happening now, I would like to welcome Jennifer Ripplinger. The exchange of Jennifer, they have been going through the transition of that for the last few weeks, and that will continue up until August 1st. So welcome, Jennifer. Glad you're here. Jennifer, we wish you the best and thank you for all you've done.
Great, thank you very much. And yes, Jennifer, you will be greatly missed, and you are greatly appreciated by the board and the district for sure. So thank you very much. We'll move on now to, are there any other things we need to do? District highlights. All right, number 3 is suggested comments from the audience. We have no written comments that have been submitted. And I think I saw Chris check. There's nobody who signed up to comment. We'll move on to item 4, which are, I'm right. Am I okay with that? I'm just making sure everybody's good. Okay. Item 4 are the meeting minutes, the approval of the regular meeting minutes from June 26, 2025. I'll move that we approve the regular meeting minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor of approving the regular meeting minutes signify with an aye. Aye. Opposed with a nay. And abstentions. All right, the meeting minutes pass from June 26, 2025. The consent agenda has a few items on it. We will look at all of the items as a group at the end of kind of reviewing them, and then a vote on approving the consent agenda as a unit, as a block. The first item is the Human Resources Action Sheet. Chris, do you want to mention anything on that sheet?
Sure. I know Kevin just spoke to Jennifer and Jennifer. They're both on the HR action tonight. We also have, I just wanted to mention Julie Rust, teacher from the middle school. She is retiring. We're going to miss her. She's done so much for so many students, and we really appreciate all that she's done. And then also I wanted to highlight, we do have a new administrator listed, replacing Mark Galloway, and his name's Brian Bueller. And he's on with us as of July 1. So he's already diving in. He's been in the building most days this month, just catching up with people and learning the ropes in the building. And he's just we believe he'll do a tremendous job for us. Anything you wanted to add on that, Kevin?
Planning on having him join us for introductions at the August board meeting, but obviously if you get an opportunity to do so earlier, please do so. But he should be here for the August meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. My son was fortunate to have Julie as an English teacher before she started doing CTE and life prep stuff, and she is just an outstanding educator, and we absolutely wish her well and thank her for her service to our district, for sure.
Definitely.
All right, the next item on the consent agenda is payroll goods and services, July 2025. And Chris, is there anything in there that you want to draw our attention to?
Just one more point on 70 Construction. As a reminder, that is the contractor that did the work for us over at John Campbell for the refrigerator freezer unit, which is being paid for out of our nutrition funds. So they just did a tremendous job, on time, on budget. Everything was just smooth as ever. So we were very impressed with working with 70. That's the first time I've been involved in a partnership. I know Kevin's worked with them in the past.
I've worked with them on multiple projects in Small World. They were a family when I was at Selah. They were a family, and now Matt, who owns M70 Construction, the contractor who did that, was a Small World, a student of mine many years ago as a principal there. So the 70 family has had generational construction companies, and now Matt has stepped in and, not surprisingly, done a fantastic job.
All right, item D on the consent agenda is a second reading and adoption for 5010 non-discrimination affirmative action. This is a revision to current policy, and 3210 non-discrimination policy. Both of those are revisions to current policies. I think the 3210 deals more with students and 5010 deals more with employees, if I remember that correctly. All right, and then there's a first reading for the student discipline policy, 3241. Kevin, could you maybe explain how what's different about this one? And
yeah, so
looking at it now,
I shared with you, and there are some links to some documents that I attached from different entities about how we got here and really what's different. And the first part is that, why are we doing this now? And the OSPI undertook some updates to student discipline rules, and they were finally adopted on June 10th. And OSPI has responsibility for student discipline rules. And because of that, they had, when they decided that there was a need to consider some changes, they have a certain process that they have to go through, and it's very lengthy. And it, like we have in our board meetings, there's opportunities for public input, public comment, and it takes a while for them to gather all that. And they do it in person as well. Like they travel across the state and get different regions and invite people to come in and speak to it, along with obviously taking written comment or other types of comment to get to a place where they want to do this. But the key changes for that really are a lot of definitions were changed in that, which means they were, which is a revision. It spoke about some, they found that the previous discipline rules kind of provided some challenging circumstances with regards to how teachers in classrooms are supposed to be working through the discipline laws. They were not clear. And it led to some challenges and problems that we've faced, that I've been involved in regards to what responsibilities our teachers have in regards to meeting the law, which is part of our policy, and how they address student discipline issues. So the clarity hopefully will help again. And then they clarified some terms that I think are going to be important as well. So from the day-to-day things, when you think about student discipline, there is not a whole lot of significant changes. They haven't gone through and changed the actual depth. Say if you say suspension, what that means. They didn't change that, but they changed some wording that I think is going to be important for our administrative staff and our teaching staff to know as we go through the new rules. The second part that you'll see there, you'll see the WASDA description of that. And then Stevens Clay is a school attorney firm out of Spokane, well-respected, not our attorneys, but are very well known. And they took on to give some more information in regards to what the changes would be. So it gives you three different perspectives there: OSPI and why they did it, WASDA because they had responsibility to revise the policy and procedure, and then from a legal perspective as well. So it'll give you the next month to relook at all of that. If you want more information, I can share that with you as well. But if you have any more questions, let me know. I know that it seems strange that we're going through first reading and then actually school would have been started with regards to this before it's adopted. Please know these emergency rules have been happening, and we've been under their guidance ever since the last school year. So having them go through your process of adopting into policy is not going to put the district in a bad situation because school would have already started.
Great, thank you, Kevin. I was just glancing through it, and we'll have time maybe to talk more about it at our next meeting, but item 2 on page 2 says allow the exercise of professional judgment skill sets, which I think is something that comes up, discipline in the classroom and trusting the teachers to be able to handle some of that. It looks like some of this is revised with that in mind, I guess I would say. Any other comments or questions about that particular first reading policy update? Okay, I move that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed with a nay. And abstentions? Okay, now we move on to the public hearing, budget public hearing. So do I need to hit the gavel or anything, or I can just say the public hearing is open, right?
If you feel better, you can
Well,
do that.
Fun. So for 2025-26, the school district and the school board holds a public hearing on the budget. So we'll open that public hearing. We'll hear first from Chris with some slides and a budget overview. If at any time during that presentation, board members want to ask questions or try and get clarification or follow up with something that's been presented, that would be great to do that. We could stop you kind of if we needed to.
Oh, definitely.
Mid-slide, right? And then following that, there's a period of public comment. So I'm glad to see that there are people here today. They may choose to comment after that on the budget. And then finally, there is the resolution that we will either vote to adopt or not to adopt or to table, I think would be our options there. Okay, Chris, I think we're ready. for
Okay,
you.
all right, let's dive in. What I'd like to do first is just do a quick refresh on conversations we've had over the last 2 to 3 years about budget and just the more difficult times that a lot of school districts are having making ends meet for a variety of reasons, which we're going to talk about through the presentation. But if you'll remember back in 22, 23, we had a conversation and we talked about a 3-year plan, a budget analysis plan. We felt that we needed to, looking at our 4-year forecast, we needed to be really diligent about looking at all of our programs, the way we're funded, our staffing levels and such, and really take a look because we had an opportunity because we're fiscally sound. We're in a good financial position as a district, and we have been for years. In fact, I brought a handout if anybody wants to have it. Over the last 25 years, our level of fund balance and where we've been, and we feel proud about that. There's a lot of people that ensure that we stay fiscally sound, but times are tougher. We have how many, 8 or 9 districts on financial watch by the state because they're in desperate times with their money. So anyway, the conversation that we had was we were going to engage into a 3-year budget analysis project starting in the 23-24 school year for 24-25. And at the end of 23-24, our ending fund balance was $11.7 million, which is over 18% of our expenditures. Our board policy is 8%. So we felt like we were in a good position to say, let's take the next 3 years, use some of our fund balance to help us soften the blow over the next 3 years, and then be at a point where we can move forward and be fiscally sound. So we did that. And again, in August of 24, we were at 11.7 million. At 8%, we would only need to be at 5 million. So we were $6.7 million more than what the board policy requires. So that's why we thought we were in a position where we could use some of the fund balance to get us through. So 24-25, we projected a hit to our fund balance of 1.3 million. We also made cuts to the tune of, I think 1.5 million. It looks like we're going to end the year right around 10.5 million, which will be about a $1.2 million hit to our fund balance. And that's what we projected. For 25-26, you'll see in this budget proposal that we're looking at a $1.2 million hit to the fund balance. And again, we planned for using some of the cash reserve to soften the blow. And probably we'll have another year in 26-27 to kind of bring us to that level where we can be sustainable and hopefully moving forward have balanced budgets. Again, we need to make reductions. And we know that. And this next year, we're going to be in a budget reduction process again. So the goal moving forward is to have balanced budgets. The levy is up in 2027. We need to take a hard look at what's all being funded by the levy and what dollar amount, and look at projections moving forward for levy dollars. Because as you know, the levy and levy equalization funding make up 12% of our revenues. So it's a big chunk of our budget. So we'll need to be looking at that along with all the staffing program reviews. We're 83% people right now. We were 81% last year. And that when you have a almost $70 million budget, that's doesn't leave a lot left after compensation. So it's important for us to look at our staffing levels as well. So I just wanted to kind of frame that moving into the presentation. The other piece I wanted to just quickly talk about is the timeline that we followed this last leading up to the presentation tonight. Just a quick reminder, December 24 was the time that we projected the enrollment and staffing. Kevin and I met, went over it in detail along with Stephanie, brought it back to cabinet and rolled it out to principals immediately in January. Early January, we said we got to start looking at staffing plans. And so our goal was to really hone in on the staffing levels by building. And we started that process in January. We also, we had our round 1 staffing collaboration with principals. February moved into the round 2 staffing collaboration. They had their homework in between the meetings. And then we would come back and refine. We moved into February and we provided the enrollment and staffing projections to the board turning around in March, our first regularly scheduled staff meetings. That information is required to be presented to certificated staff by contract. That was done. And we provided in February also is when I allocate out the projected allocations for state and federal programs to our budget directors, and they begin formulating their budgets. March, we again had another round with principals, and also we gave the material supplies and operating cost allocations to buildings in March, and so on and so forth. Legislative session ended in April. We required budgets to be submitted to our office in early May. We wanted them end of April, but it worked out early May. We got all the ASB, the building budget budgets, and also the building budgets, and also the program budgets. So then we could keep moving with the building of the budget. So that's kind of the timeline. Tonight, we're presenting the budget. We gave you a brief budget update on June 12th at a budget study session. We went through some of the components of the budget. Tonight, we're presenting the budget. I'm presenting the budget, and I'm asking for your approval after the hearing closes. I want to answer all your questions, and then you have an opportunity to adopt the budget tonight, or you can make a decision to table it and ask for us to do additional work, and we can come back in August. But the budget has to be adopted in August. It's due to OSPI by the end of August. So that's kind of setting the stage. Did I miss anything, Kevin? Okay. The other thing I guess I would mention quickly is in the budget, the board policy for the minimum fund balance, the 8% is broken down into three components. 2% is the emergency fund amount. 3% is budget contingency, and 3% is for cash flow. So we've been diligent about keeping our fund balance levels above 8%. In fact, if I hand this out, you'll see we're well above the 8% for years. My 25 years here, we've been above, with the exception of 3 years where we went 6.7, 7.9, 7.5, which was before the policy was adopted early in 2000s. Okay, so I just want to make sure that everybody understood the component of the reserve, the different components, and that there is a component in there for districts to use as a budget contingency fund. And many districts are having to dip into their budget contingency fund. So we're thankful that we're not. So that's, we're still way above the 8%. So that's kind of setting the stage. So I'll jump in unless anybody has any questions about anything I talked about. All right. Oh, I got to do this. Okay, we'll go right in here. I'm going to look at my screen too, because my eyes don't always go that far. So I'm going to jump through the first few slides. Just as a reminder, we always like to have slides in the intro of this presentation and the year-end presentation, because it's important to remind folks that a budget is a financial plan that is driven by our mission, our vision, our core priorities, most importantly, the Viking promise. And so you can see those slides, but I'm not going to actually spend a ton of time on them because I have lots of slides and I want to get to the meat of the presentation, but please feel free to ask any questions about these items as well. Okay, so this being the most important, the Viking promise is our goal is to meet the needs of the whole child by creating an equity-centered and engaging and personalized learning experience in an emotionally and physically safe environment for each child in Selah. We talk about this all the time. Everything we talk about implementing, we're always going back to this lens and making sure that the things that we offer, that we structure them so that we meet the Viking promise. Okay, so let's get down to slide number. Very quickly on this, to give you the 24-25 student demographic information. We like to show this every year. You can see we're pretty much equal on male and female students. And like we have been for years, our Hispanic and white populations are the highest in the district, but we do have other students in the district with other nationalities. Okay, a budget. I just want to revisit this. This is an annual financial plan. So basically, when we put this together, it's a plan. Things happen that are out of our control and things are within our control also happen. But when we set the budget, for instance, we had a couple of years where we budgeted, or the budget that was adopted showed a deficit, but we actually ended up to the good with our fund balance. A good example is 22-23, I believe it was. We budgeted for a deficit, 1.1 deficit, and we actually ended up 93 students over projection, which produced $930,000 more dollars than we had planned to spend because it was additional enrollment. So pretty soon that year, we actually grew our fund balance by 100,000. So there are years that show that we had a year that we had a budget with a $2.2 million deficit recently. And that one, was the year that 23-24, when we engaged in all of our budget work, and Kevin made decisions at his level to say, no travel unless you're traveling with kids. We are going to cut back on our spending for supplies, for all the different areas. Some positions that we had open, we didn't fill. So there were several things that we did during that year that helped us. So we didn't end up 2.2 against fund balance. So there's a lot of factors that go into it every year, but the end result's what you look at with the fund balance, where it lands at the end of the year. Budget priorities. These are pretty typical. They've evolved a little bit over the years. Obviously, student safety is the single most important thing that we want to ensure in the district. So the things that we put in place, we always want to make sure that we achieve that. We want the allocation of resources. I talked about that following our priorities. Meeting the basic needs of the whole child. We talked about that with the Viking Promise. Provide an equitable distribution of resources that recognize the diverse needs of all students. Those are conversations we have all the time so that we meet the needs of all of our students, not just some of our students. Providing a personalized learning experience and emotionally, physically safe environment, as I mentioned. Meet legal compliance and educational standards, maintain fiscal responsibility and stability over time, which I feel very strongly about. My 25 years here, I feel that we've done a great job with that as a district, many people involved in that. And ensure the impact to students is at the core of all financial decisions. As we look at these budget reductions that need to be made, and in our review throughout that process, and as we've done with the other years, we look at that. What's the impact to kids? Do we need to make a different decision because of the impact to kids? And so we want to keep that at the core. And also we want to make sure that we include a reasonable level of capacity for the unforeseen. Every budget has capacity in it. We budget for capacity on the revenue and expenditure side because we don't know what grants, special grants and different things that are going to come through. So we budget capacity on that. And we budget additional capacity on the expenditure side because for the unforeseen, we're trying to avoid also a budget extension at some point. But as we've had to scale back on these budgets to get them down to the most, as close as we can, that extra capacity on the expenditure side's is limited now, but so that's how that works. Okay. So if you see, this slide gives you a snapshot of all 5 funds. Remember, we have 5 funds. Our main operating fund is our general fund. That is where we do all of our business. ASB is our Associated Student Body Fund. We won't go into detail really on that. If you have questions, you can ask. Debt Service Fund, that fund exists just to service our debt. Our debt being our bonds that built schools. So we have debt, and that fund, we budget principal and interest payments, and we get taxes coming in on that on the revenue side, but it's pretty straightforward. Capital projects, we do have a capital projects fund. As you can see, we have the donation from Wilbur Rep in there. We used to make annual distributions from the general fund into capital projects for the unforeseen. And when we had older facilities, that was really important because we spent about $1 million a year on different upgrades and things that we needed to HVAC and all of that in our older facilities. We do want to get back to a point where we feel like we can start contributing to that capital projects fund annually again, even if it's a smaller dollar amount, because we need to plan for the unforeseen and have dollars in there for that. Right now, that fund's being this year, and you'll see is we have two projects, the field turf project and the CTE addition. We'll talk about that in a bit. Transportation vehicle, that fund exists to replace buses. The revenue coming in is your interest earnings and the depreciation on our current buses. So we get allocations for our current buses that we buy, and those revenues go right back into this fund and we buy additional buses. We have not had to contribute to this fund for quite some time. I think we've only contributed 1 year. I think we had to put in 70,000 from the general fund to make it so we had enough money to buy however many buses we bought that year. That's been a long time ago. Now the depreciation covers we buy 1 to 2 buses every year. So we keep our fleet up, which is good. Any questions on that? And we'll get into the detail of the general fund here. All right, so the budget highlights for the general fund. So you can see that we've oops, sorry. I gotta remember to do that. Okay, so we have about $1 million more in revenue for 25-26 on their budget side of things, 1.6% increase. Our expenditures were 1.4% increase from prior year, so 950,000. So the net projected with the entire budget projected deficit is a 1.2 million. Projected cash reserve at the end of the year is 9.3 million, which is 13.5%. And again, our board policy requires 8%. Certified staffing from 24-25 to 25-26, we did reduce a net of 2 teaching positions, but we actually increased slightly on our classified positions. And some of that, we'll go over a slide that kind of highlights where the staffing changes are. Enrollment projection is a decrease of 83 FTE. We lost about 54 FTE over the course from 23-24 to 24-25, which is about 1.5%. And we're looking moving forward as we project out. I projected from the cohort out to 28-29. We're looking at about a 1.5 to 1.7% decline in enrollment every year. So we need to plan for that. That's something that's, as I mentioned before, that's the single most important thing that we do is that projection and staffing to it. So our projection next year is 83, it's actually 80 FTE lower than the year before. Okay, so this slide here is, I know it's difficult to see. So basically this slide, what it provides is on the left half is the certificated FTE from 24-25 to 25-26 by program. And on the right is the classified FTE. So the yellow highlights are kind of the ones I was gonna talk about tonight. The first being on the certificated side, we dropped 3.5 basically FTE on the cert side. So one of the things that we worked really hard on with principals is once we gave them their allocations or staffing allocations based on enrollment projections, reality set in for them. And we said, okay, you're seeing this many students less next year probably. So you're going to need to cut X amount of staff. So the net on that, on the basic ed side of things, we reduced by 3.5. On the, staying on the certified side for a second, under 79, that's levy. We actually increased by 2.1. In the end, our exercise that we went through with principals netted down to a point where we had 2.1 FTE left that we couldn't balance on the basic ed side. So we funded it on the levy side. And basically that's teaching staff. It also includes the 0.2 we pay for the safety director, Joe Coscart. And so it's 2.1. So next year, or as we refine this over the next year, looking at our budget reductions, our goal will be to have zero certs funded by the levy. Okay. On the classified side of things, you can see that we reduced on the basic ed by 2.5. That's about 5 paras, just to put it in perspective. Teaching side, a 1.0 is a full-time teacher, but on the classified side, a 0.548 is a full-time, or not a full-time, but a school year para. So 2.5 we reduced in the basic ed. 21 special ed, we increased by 2.5. So basically, we reduced it on the basic ed side, but we needed to increase on the special ed side. We've throughout the year, we get new students coming into the district with IEPs, some of them requiring a one-on-one para or other services. So in the end, we're going to take a hard look at those as well, but it makes it more difficult. We oftentimes don't have a choice. So we'll be looking at that program as well. 69, which is ECAP. There's a slight increase, just 1.76. So say 3 paras, a little over 3 paras increase, and that's all based on funding for ECAP. So all of those are funded by the program money. And moving from a certificated model with ECAP to a classified model. So we don't have actual certified teachers in our ECAP preschool program. We actually have lead teachers that have a degree, and so they're on the classified side of things. They don't make the same level of salary or compensation that a teacher does. And they've just done a tremendous job. It was a great move for us. And most districts don't have an ECAP program with certificated teachers, just so you know, the programs around us are all with classified as well. And then finally on the levy here on this classified side of things, we did see an increase of 2.5 FTE or 5 paras. Again, this is an area that we're going to look at closely over the next year. Again, it's tough. Some of our buildings, I'll just use SIS as an example. It's got a lot of exits. It's got a lot, it's a complex building that's laid out a lot differently than our other schools. And it takes more people to supervise bus pickup, bus drop off, supervision on the playground, supervision inside the building. So it's something that we're going to need to work on with Sarah, but it's on our radar for sure. Anything you want to add on that, Kevin? Okay. These next few slides, we don't really need to spend a lot of time on unless you want to. Changes in staffing, it just gives you a snapshot over the last 5 years, what our staffing numbers look like in FTE for certified on the left, classified on the right. You can see the slight decline in certs there the last 3 years, and it's been a little bit of an incline on classified. Again, we're going to look at that closer this year. Changes in staffing costs, you can see pretty much, we'll talk about the gap that the way state funds us with salaries on average versus actual, and our staffing with IPD implicit, what is it? Price deflator. That's like the old COLA that comes through. And then so you can see there on benefits, the retirement rates went down. Sorry. On retirement or benefits, you can see retirement rates went down. So from 24-25 to 25-26, you can see almost a little bit of a decrease, although the medical benefit costs to the district went up a little bit, the retirement rates went down. So it's a little bit, it offsets itself pretty much. Okay, so any questions on that before I dive into this slide on reasons for projected 1.2 million in deficit? Okay, so with this one of the things that we've talked about before is the inflationary price deflator. So that's the IPD, which used to be COLA. So that rolls through to all your state programs, most state programs, basic ed funded for sure, and then some of the state programs. So we get an allocation for that. We don't get any allocation or increase in the way that we're funded for salaries in any of our federal programs. And as you know, we have a lot of staff funded in federal programs. And same with the levy. We have staff right now funded by the levy. We don't get additional funding to pay for the IPD. And when they pass through the IPD, the expectation is it gets passed through to all staff, which it's a given. You need to pass it through to all staff, not just the staff that are funded by the programs getting the increase. So that's part of the problem, is we don't get that. And the way that the state funds us now is they fund us on average. So for teachers, they fund an average teacher. We used to get funding based on where a teacher landed on the salary schedule for education and experience. We would get funded for that. Now, for instance, for 25-26, the state is funding us $80,000 per teacher. Well, our average teacher cost, because we have a senior staff, is $95,000 a teacher. So that's $15,000 a teacher that we have to cover because the state doesn't provide the funding. This is a big legislative, needs to be and it is a legislative priority to figure out a better way. Maybe they go back to this mixed factor funding that they used to give us, but now with this average, districts like us with the senior staff, we lose big time. And our salaries, and the same problem exists with our classified and our administrative funding for salaries. We do comparisons with other districts every time we bargain, and we're competitive. We are not number one. We're not the last in line. We're in the middle of the pack, sometimes in the top 3 or 4 districts, maybe 5, but we're competitive. But because we want to get high quality people to come work for us. But the problem is we're not funded appropriately. So it's probably the biggest, in my opinion, it's the biggest issue the state has with funding. The second thing, and the second large, and these are both huge things, is the inflation for material supplies and operating costs. And we don't get funded for the cost. And the biggest 2 examples are insurance and utilities. And on a slide later, I have broken out. In the last 3 years, our utility costs have increased by $468,000. 45% is what we've increased in utilities. Insurance has gone up $244,000 over the last 3 years, which is 55,000 or 55%. I mean, think about those increase. We don't get funded for those increases, and that's just 2 examples. Supplies and everything else. The district doesn't keep up with the funding for MSOCs. Special ed being another one. Special ed funding, yes, they made improvements this last session. They try to every session, but it's not enough. I mean, our projected overage for this next school year is $1 million. That's a lot. That's just for our district. So yes, we did apply for safety net funding. I think we're going to get 30,000, but this is the first year really in 24-25 that we'd spent enough to get safety net. So hopefully definitely Betty's done a great job with this, and we have other students that are higher cost students that we could submit next year. So we will get some of that back. And we just need to look at this, but this is a shortage of funding. The state does not provide us adequate funding. Transportation programs, another one that we don't get full funding for. And part of it is the funding side, and part of it is our structure with our transportation model that we're using right now, which we're revisiting. We use a 3-tier approach, which we added a 3rd tier when we built the kindergarten building. So we need to go back to and this next year, we're going to consolidate routes on that 3rd tier. And then the year after, we need to take a look at potentially whether we want to keep the 3rd tier. That'll be a final decision by Kevin, but we need to look at it. The problem with going back to 2 is we may need more drivers, and we don't have a lot of drivers. The other thing is, the other main issue with 2 tiers is we had kids on buses for a long time, 45 minutes to an hour plus on the bus because the tier took longer. And if we take away the 3rd tier, that's going to be another building and kids that need to be delivered. So we're going to do a full analysis of that this year just to see where we're at. And we know parents, there's mixed feelings out there. A lot of parents don't like the 3rd tier because they go to work at 7 and they have to drop their student off at 9. So anyway, we'll take a look at that. And with some other things with transportation, we'll look at as well. Enrollment projection, again, 80 FTE drives 800,000 less in funding. That's part of, you think about the $1.2 million deficit that you're looking at in this budget proposal. $800,000 is what we're getting less because of our student enrollment. Now, we did make some staffing adjustments, but that is a big component. The next slide shows you, gives you an analysis of the last 5 years of our enrollment. You can see that we did actually increase out of COVID, and we got to where we recovered fully, and now we're in this slight decline. We have these smaller classes moving through the system. Our kindergarten classes are smaller every year. So then you get the smaller classes moving through our system, and therefore our total enrollment is declining by about, like I said, 1.5% to 1.8% per year is what we're looking at on enrollment. And this just gives you a summary of the enrollment projection for next year. You can see that kinder, we dropped our projection to 225. It was at 236. We're not quite there on enrollments yet, but August is always a big month. We have 24 less students at John Campbell that we're projecting, 47 less at SIS, 48 less at the middle school, and actually 7 to the positive at the high school. So as a district, when you get our other items, our ALE and such, we're looking at 80 less from 24-25 is what the projection is.
So this is the place where certain school districts make decisions and they roll the dice, and the dice turns up okay, or the dice doesn't turn up okay. We could have rolled the dice. It's not in the best interest of the district. It's not the responsibility that Chris and I share to put the district in those situations, but there are some that do. We could have rolled the dice and said, oh, we'll probably not lose 80 FTEs. And then we worry day in and day out, the first part of the school year, do the whites of the eyes of the students show up? And do we have students that leave us? You know, that is not a good feeling to be concerned about who shows up and who leaves. So the better, more fiscally responsible plan is what you see here, is that we budget for 80 less. Now, if those 80 less don't show, then our budget is in a good position. If they do show, and we do have 80 more students than what we budgeted for, then that puts the district in a good fiscally responsible position as well. Again, we use 80 because that's our projection of what we do based on the data analysis of it. And you've heard Chris refer to the analysis that she does with regards to enrollment projections. Now, if you go below 80 and there's more than 80 students that don't show, then that becomes concerning for us. Obviously, we didn't budget enough of a reduction. On the other end, say that we have 120 more students than we budgeted for, that becomes problematic as well. Not from a fiscal standpoint, but from a service standpoint. That might require the district to hire additional staff to cover the needs of the students, of those 120 extra students. Specifically, if a large number of those students are at a specific grade level or have a specific need, it could put the district in a bind to hire. But again, that in most cases is an okay problem to have, especially in the environment that we're in. We used to worry about being able to find quality teachers at a short period of time. That is not an issue that we would face because of the vast number of districts who have decided to reduce and not hire. So that will play out. Regardless of where we budgeted for, it is an interesting time for us as we check enrollment through the first number of weeks of the school year to see where we land according to what we budgeted for. But if people were to ask, board and in the audience, why would the district budget for 80 students less? Well, it's fiscally responsible, and we don't feel like we want to roll the dice and gamble with the fiscal best interest of the district.
And the other part of it is it's not a number that we pick out of the air. We actually use a cohort survival statistical method, and we run it on a straight method and a weighted, looking at weighted is looking at the most recent 4 years, heavily weighting the most current year. But we look at that, and what it is it's a survival rate from one grade to the next. And those factors drive the future projection. And so that's the starting point. And then we massage the numbers a little bit, but we do use a mathematically sound practice in projecting enrollment that's been pretty accurate. Okay. Moving to the next slide gives you the revenue and expenditure history. So our blue is the revenues, yellow is expenditures. So you can kind of see how the years back to 1920 line out on revenues and expenditures. And again, that's a little bit skewed with COVID dollars, but it actually gives you an idea of what it looks like for the last 5 years.
And Chris, just for clarity, you see the steady line going up. That's almost entirely, well, it could be MSOC, but a lot of it is increase in salary.
It's in, yeah, over
Benefit.
80% people, so it's gonna go up for that. All right, a closer look at revenues and expenditures, just summary wise. So the net increases from 24-25 to 25-26. You can see that the breakdown of the additional $1 million on the revenue side and additional 952,000 on the expenditure side. The local piece is the local taxes to taxpayers. Those are increasing based on the ballot measure that went out and everybody voted. So though that has a stepped up amount in it. State general, you can see that's your apportionment dollars and your excess costs for SPED, the amount of basic ed dollars that funnel into SPED and so on and so forth. So you'll see there based on a lower enrollment projection, we're not looking at an increase there. Special is your other programs like state special ed, LAP, learning assistance program, your transitional bilingual and such. So we're seeing an increase of 400 there. So in the majority, we are getting more funding in special ed. Federal specific is your federal programs, Title I, which we'll get to a slide on that. We're not sure. About 400,000 of our federal dollars haven't been released yet. So that's the main things on the revenue side. The expenditure side, your salaries, 1.3 million. Our salaries are going up. Benefits are going down slightly based on what I talked about, and classified salaries going up. Those are the IPD increases in negotiations and such. And then our supplies are going down. You can see we pretty much stripped a lot of the MSOCs out of the budget to try to get it down to the $1.2 million projected deficit. There's no capital outlay in the budget. There's very little travel budget. There's supplies, as you can see, are cut back. So we're going with the skeleton budget this next year.
How do we come down 29,000 on travel? Because weren't we already pretty skeleton last?
We were, but we still have travel costs associated with traveling with students to competitions and things, the state competitions and that kind of stuff. So we still do have some travel, but it's not, the employee travel's minimal without students. Okay, let's go to, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these next few slides. It just shows the percentages of how our budget breaks down in dollars. So I was going to kind of skip over those unless you have questions. So these are all pie charts to how our budget breaks down. This is a good one, shows you in the purple there. That's salary and benefit costs, 84%. So that's the majority, as we talked about on that. Okay, so Kevin and I talked, and we wanted to make sure and give the board and the community tonight just kind of a snapshot reminder of when our next levy is and what leads up to that levy vote in February 2027. So you can see there, October 26 is we have a board study session on levy planning. So that'll come up next year in October. November, we provide a levy recommendation to the board based on, and a lot of the information that'll be discussed at the planning session. We come back to the board in November, we make a recommendation. And then in December, we bring a board resolution, a resolution to the board to officially approve the levy. And then the board has an option to select between February, April, and is it August? The other time that people can run levies. February is the most successful month to run them. So most districts run them in February. So you can see above that in the white that for 25-26, our levy funding is almost 5.6 million and levy equalization is almost 2.5. So a little over $8 million, and that makes up 12% of our revenues, as I mentioned earlier.
And for those of you who don't know in the crowd about the levy equalization is state funds that help support property poor school districts. And so 2.4 million comes with that. It only comes to us if we pass the levy. So if we don't pass the levy, then you don't get any levy equalization. So it's really, it's for some school districts that have a double levy failure. They're losing their local dollars, but they're also losing the state addition for being a property poor school district. So now we may not think of ourselves as a property poor school district, but just take a vision of our school district and maybe take a look at what the industry and infrastructure of a school of the Bellevue School District. And you see a difference in what is there and the amount of tax base that's generated between those two. And by the way, Bellevue is in one of those 8 districts that we mentioned earlier that is in very difficult financial problems, even with all of the economic growth that is going on there.
One more thing on that, your levy equalization, our levy equalization allocation, property poor districts comes from the state levy tax that's on your tax bill. So that gets funneled back to property poor districts.
Also with the levy, it's important to know that a lot of, almost every other dollar that we've talked about tonight has, let's say, red tape, strings attached, only can be used in certain ways. The levy dollars and the levy equalization dollars are the dollars that have the most flexibility, obviously. They're the ones that the community approves for certain things they believe in, that they want to see our students have opportunities to be a part of. They include a lot of the things that we may think that are a part of basic education, but they're truly not. And it's almost expectations that communities have with regards to their schools, but aren't funded. And because the paramount duty of the state is for basic education, certain things that we see as basic education or that we see are basic, the state doesn't have that same definition. The most easiest one is student activities, which include athletics activities and all that stuff. That's what we assume to be a part of our basic education, but the state doesn't view that as basic education. So in order to have those opportunities for our students, the levy is the funding source along with LEA that supports what we see as a basic education in our community. I can go on about levy and levy equalization for a long, long time. We're not going to tonight. I think it's important to know, though, that it is 12% of the entire budget, and it is the more flexible dollars, the most amount of flexible dollars that we have to make decisions on what our students should receive.
In other words, the salary gap that we talk about with what we're funded versus what we pay, a lot of that's funded out of the levy.
Just, can you say again that the LEA funding, that if we don't pass a levy,
We don't get it.
But as individual taxpayers, we're still paying.
You're still paying it.
but our
That's a,
district won't get any of it back.
exactly, and that's a really good point. Thank you. It is. We still, all taxpayers still pay state levy tax, but if we fail our levy, we don't get any levy equalization funds. So that would be unfortunate. Thank you, Sarah.
And again, why we put this in here is that previous to the last election, it was common traditional practice that in the school district, the levy was every 2 years. The last time we ran a levy, we ran what's called a 4-year levy. And so over those years, we've kind of lost track a little bit about, oh, when's the next levy going to be? Because we had 4 years. So this slide is to clear up any miscommunication about when the next levy is. Actually, Chris and I had the same realization one day, because we were thinking we were going to plan to start doing the levy stuff like last spring and into the summer, and then we were going to run the election in February of 26. Well, we both were relieved that we aren't going to go through all that until February of 27. But still, that's to get it on before you know it, it will be here in front of us.
All right. Next slide is a required slide by the state. We show what our allocation is for MSOCs from the state and then what our budgeted expenditures are. So you can see there that our revenue is 4.8 million in MSOC allocation and our actual budgeted MSOC expenditures are 5.5. So we spend 738,000 for 25-26, and normally it's more than that, but we scraped everything out of the budget. So, so this shows that we're compliant. If we were positive, then we would have to explain how we were spending those additional dollars on student benefited learning activities and such. No, it's been in it. It's in every year. Yeah, for the last at least 5 years. All right, 4-year forecast. So with all that said, the other requirement by the state is to put together a 4-year forecast, which we've always forecasted out, but now it needs to be part of the budget, which it has been now for a few years. So the financial forecast was a little more difficult this year when we're talking about federal dollars and really where we might see increases in even state revenues and with a declining enrollment and such for local. And then salary and benefits. So some of the increases vary. Normally, we went with a 3% on the state side, which are on the revenue side, other than federal, but now we've mixed it up a little bit. So we'll show you how that pencils out. This slide shows you the revenues broken down and the expenditures. You can take a look at that, but this is really the slide we need to focus on. So this gives you 24, 25, where we think we're going to land. Again, our beginning fund balance in September 24 was $11.6 million, almost 11.7. We're projecting to be around 10.5, which is, we budgeted a $1.3 million deficit budget last year and was adopted by the board. So we're going to be pretty close to what we thought when you all adopted the budget. So that at 10.5 million, that's 15.5%. So as our policy requires 8. In 25, 26, we're looking at an ending fund balance 9.3, which is 13.5%. This is without making any cuts at all.
Yeah,
It's
the
just
most
straight.
important part about this slide is that if we do nothing, we
Yeah.
don't do a thing. We just keep operating the way that we're currently operating, spending at the way we're currently spending, believe we're going to get about the same amount of revenue. And we just don't do anything. Fiscally irresponsible, not something that Chris or the board we know would want to have happen. But if we just let it go and hope that somebody's going to bail us out, this is the result after 4 years.
And that says at the top, assuming no reduction. So that's this analysis. So you can see there, we're in the red, 28, 29. We can't go there. And even in 27, 28, we're at 3.91%, which is way below the parameters. So this is without any cuts, as Kevin mentioned. The next slide shows just the fund balance history with that 4-year projection coming up, showing in the red in 8/29 at the end of 29. So if you look at the next slide, that just gives it in a bar chart, line going straight down, because it's not a good practice to not balance. And then the next one talks about assuming cumulative reductions. So we put in here $1.5 million in reductions per year, accumulating to 28, 29. You can see that for 25, 26, again, 13.5% ending fund balance projected. 26, 27, if we cut 1.5 million, then we're looking at dropping to 11.5% as a projected ending fund balance of 6.6 million. 27, 28, again, adding another 1.5 million in cuts, we would be down to the 8%. We'd hit our reserve at the end of 28, 27, 28, and then we would go below in 28, 29. So we need to definitely have a solid plan as we move through this next year, looking at everything again in all programs, staffing levels, and everything to get to where we need to be. And again, this shows you history on the fund balance. I wanted to point out a couple things on this. So in 2019, reminder, that was when the McCleary decision came out, and districts got a lot of money, that a lot of it went to compensation. In that year, the state took away the staff mix factor in the way that they fund us for teachers, or slightly after that year. It was right around that time. So that's when districts they started to get funded based on average. The next 5 years there, you can see are COVID. And we had an influx of dollars that came into the district over that 5-year period for different things. We used it for summer school. We used it for other after-school programs for kids. We had device replacement. There's tons of things that the COVID money that could be used for. And we used it to benefit kids, but we also used it to our benefit. Some of it backfilled expenditures that we paid for in other ways before because it was federal funding, but they didn't have supplant requirements on it. So like summer school, we paid for out of our COVID relief money. If we funded any staffing out of our COVID dollars, it was a plan to move them out of COVID funding within a year. And so that we didn't have ongoing staffing costs tied to that, because that's what got a lot of school districts into trouble. They funded a lot of additional staff, and then at the end of COVID, they were stuck with the staff and they didn't cut them. And then they ended up having to find a way to pay it. And normally they just went into their fund balance to pay it. Selah, I think our district as a whole did a really good job. The administration and everyone involved was very conscientious about how those funds were used. And it benefited us. You can see there in the purple in 2020 through 2024, our fund balance percentage is 22%, 21, 19, 18, 18. So we stayed fiscally sound with that additional funding. So we feel good about that. I just wanted to point that out so everybody knew that that's why those years are highlighted there. Okay, so with this scenario with cuts, you can see the line still slightly trending down on our ending fund balance, but not as drastic as leaving it without any reductions. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, ongoing budget challenges. We've talked about some of these things. Expenditures are rising at a higher rate than revenues. We know that. Inflation. By the end and this just reiterates what we just talked about on the previous slides with the 4-year forecast. Board policy. So based on this and looking at where we're at right now, we're recommending that you not increase the percentage that's the minimum fund balance policy. We would recommend that we leave it at 8% now because there's too many unknowns, things that we can't predict. And so that would be our recommendation. Obviously, the board gets to make the final decision on that, but we wanted to have that in the presentation. Okay, so the next in yellow there, you can see funding level for basic education compensation lower than actual averages. We talked about that. MSOCs, we talked about that. Uncertainty of federal funding. For those of you that don't know, we received, Trump actually put a hold on federal funding in some programs, and we should find out in the next 20 days or so if the funding is going to be released. For Selah, it equates to about $400,000. And this slide right here gives it to you, and I'll go back to that other slide right here. Title I migrant funds is $180,000 for Selah. Title II Part A is $115,000. And then you can see there's 60 for Title III, 60 for Title IV, and the dual language, 50,000. So actually with dual language, we're right about 465,000 if those get cut. And most of these funds are used for staff. And a reminder, we've already issued contracts to our staff. So we don't have an option to now lay off teachers. They all have signed contracts. So we will know before school starts, I think, whether those funds are going to be released.
Yeah, and it doesn't look good. I'll just be blunt with you. I'm counting on not having these dollars. There are things going on that Congress is going to take some action that allows this to happen. It is unprecedented, at least in my time as a superintendent, that funds that have already been allocated or you plan to receive and then you don't get them. So it happens every year that we don't get certain things, but at least we know ahead of time that it's going to not happen. And then we don't issue contracts, or we don't make agreements with people, or we don't spend in a certain way. This one is different, is the timing of when we're finding out that were not going to be receiving it. And so we've already made decisions and placed people in employment with assurances that they're going to be, you know, in those positions. Now, there are some school districts that are in the millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they would go bankrupt, basically, if they didn't take severe actions with regards to employees and or other contracts that they would have. But again, I am twofold worried about this. One, the timing of it. Two, I do believe that it's going to take place. Three, I believe this is just the beginning of it. And four, the biggest worry is that we may lose all the dollars, but the requirements that we continue to provide the services that each of these are there are still in place and still mandated by the federal government. So it's one thing to lose the funding and then also, okay, we don't need to do that anymore. All right, that would make sense, that we're not going to provide the funding to you. In turn, we're not going to require you to do the things that have been in statute. What we're worried about and what we're hearing is that the funding is going to go away, but the expectation of still doing all the things associated with meeting the needs of migrant students, as well as the other dual language and the other title programs, are still going to be in statute, still going to be required, still going to be audited, and still going to force school districts to use other dollars and resources in order to meet those demands. For these, that is concerning. But when you talk about other parts of the title programs, we're not talking about $465,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 here or there. We're talking about significant amounts of money that would really press the district and all districts to make some decisions they haven't had to make before. I.e., this goes back to what part of the real reason why Chris and I feel really our recommendation is to wait and see what happens with regards to adjusting any of the board funding balance percentile. I think if you would ask us 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we would be more than happy to entertain that and get all the information you would need to make that decision to increase if you chose to. But right now, with the uncertainty of what's going on at the federal level, we don't think that's the best interest of the district. Ultimately, that's your decision to do that. Things may change. We also have heard that there are programs within federal funds that we don't receive as a district, but other districts do receive. You may have seen some programs called 21st Century After School programs that districts were receiving funds, and they were at risk as well. And then just as of the last week, they've released those. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like Chris said, 20 days, but from what we're hearing, these are pretty set that we're probably not going to receive these funds. And the bigger fear is what's next.
Just to connect the dots, Kevin, if we didn't receive these funds or they weren't released, and the lawsuits that are being proposed or that have been forwarded against the administration are unsuccessful, that would come from our reserve funds essentially, right? Okay, all right, thank you.
In addition to what the 1.2.
And
Right.
and again, we would start the preparation as like, okay, we can't do this again. We may have to take on the responsibilities, but that's just going to go to somebody else. And we're going to have to reduce, $465,000 someplace else.
Great, thank you.
Going back a slide to the legislative priorities, this kind of reiterates pretty much everything I've talked about throughout the presentation as far as priorities go. And so we're hopeful that we'll get some action on these. All right.
Question, so the reserve account is broken into 3 buckets, correct? So the 1.2 million shortage that we'll be paying with out of general fund, will that come equally out of each of those buckets, or do you have to figure that out?
Well, the fortunate thing is we're over the 8%. But if we got down to 8%, I was trying to say, okay, this is how much it is made up of that. But now we're over the 8%, well over it. So we're able to kind of soften the blow.
To that 8%.
Yeah.
And we have to be very
Yeah.
shown which account or which portion of the bucket we're taking it out.
Yeah, we just have to be really careful. Speaking for myself, I would not recommend that we go below 8%. We figure out a way to stay above 8 to 10%. I mean, it's just not a comfortable place to be. I've never had to deal with it because it was a long time ago where we had slightly lower than 8. We had a lot less money back then and the budgets were a lot lower, but man, I hear the horror stories from some of the
They're
people
at
around us.
3, they're at
Yeah.
5, they're, yeah, for
And
sure.
we've got districts around us. I mean, I also have a handout if anyone's interested when we're done about where we fall in comparison to the other ESD 105 districts up and down the valley. And we're the second for districts our size within the enrollment that we have, we're second highest. Wapato runs, they're sitting at like 25%. I think they're way higher than anybody else, but yeah, they're 25%. We're 18.71. This was as of 23-24. I don't have the updated one, but we, pretty much all these districts put money annually into the capital projects fund, but we sit really, really well when you look at these other districts. You've got districts like Yakima at the end of that year was 4.73%. And the size of their district, not to name a district, but we have a lot of challenges around us with other districts, so we're
Well, again,
fortunate.
that's over the last several years now, that's been one of our focuses is even though like for this year we'll be 1.2 over budget, that is a decision that we're making because the flip side of having too much money is that irresponsible as well.
Mhm.
And it's allowed us to kind of take these steps at the levels that we're taking it
Yeah.
at without having to push the panic button. But we
Yeah.
we felt we were too far over that 8%.
Yeah.
And that's why we're taking some of these steps.
Jamie makes a good point of you can be fiscally irresponsible going both ways.
Yeah.
Of having too much money in your savings and not using it for its intended purpose, which is to provide education and services to students. So there are districts, and when we get audited, there are districts that I'm sure the auditor has said, what is going on here? You are hoarding this money away. What's the purpose of it? What are you going to use it for? Do you have a plan for the future? We are not there. Wapato, I don't know the story behind them, but that may, what causes them to be at that percentage. So it also, the money is taxpayer money. The taxpayer money, the money is there because taxpayers are paying those taxes to provide public education to students. You should be using it for that purpose, but also responsible enough to have enough money set aside for the things that are going to challenge you in the times of that, like we're in right now.
All right, so the next 3 years, we'll be talking, and this project we'll jump into this in October, probably as early as October, to start breaking down the buckets again and how we're gonna analyze those buckets, and we'll have leads, people that are in charge of the different areas, but bottom line, we need to look at everything again. We need to look at funding and spending in every program and everything we do and see where we can save. It was a process, the process that we're going through every year really now, but we're gonna have to find some additional cuts, and it will involve people, unfortunately. Positions, which for years we've been able to resolve and satisfy reductions through attrition, and that's been wonderful. Since I've been here, we haven't had a formal RIF, knock on wood, never had to institute a RIF with staffing. So that's nice. But I will say we have about 30 retirements and resignations this year between classified and certified. And we typically have 60. So we're like half. So people are staying put too. All right, very quickly, I know we're spending a lot of time here. Debt service fund, this gives you an overview of what the outstanding amounts are on our bonds and when they pay off. So you can see there we have almost $56 million in debt with our bonds. One pays off, our 22 bonds pay off in 2036 and our 18 bonds pay off in 2042. So you can see that there. The CAP Projects Fund, as I mentioned, we have two main projects. The one will be taking the front seat this current school year, 25-26, is our artificial turf project. We'll be doing beginning stages, and we already are a little bit involved in we are doing the design process for the CTE edition as well. So the construction and such on that one will be in the 26-27 school year. So those are our main two projects in CAP projects this year. And again, that gives you the list of the other miscellaneous things that are happening and additional capacity that we've built into that.
Chris, I just have
Yeah.
a quick question on that project. I know we trust the contractors, but what recourse do we have? Because I've heard some horror stories about fields being put in and having drainage problems shortly after they're put in and stuff like that. So what recourse do we have if the contractor comes in and say we
Yeah.
get 3 or 4 years out and start having problems?
They're required to provide us their insurance if they get awarded the bid. We've also have a time frame that we can go back and go against the contractor to replace things or change things based on how things are working. We've done that on our schools, things that haven't worked out. We've gone back to the contractor and they've fixed them. But yeah, there's all the specs and everything that's involved in the contract will protect us on those things. Kevin?
And also the thing you do is you do your homework and you find out who those contractors were and who their subcontractors were, and you use your leverage to not have them. You can't deny them the ability to bid, but if you have reason to believe that their work would create a situation like they've had in the past, you can bypass them and go to the next lowest bidder per se. There are RCWs in that. That's probably our best leverage in order to not have situations happen of other school districts who, for whatever reason, it's usually what happens under the field, all the drainage systems and all that. That's really where the problems have laid. And so we've encouraged our current architect to enhance specific staff that have professional experience with specifically in that, the drainage system, the material that's used, whereas some other architects may not go to this much detail on what goes on underneath the ground. So we are worried about that. We made that very clear right up at the beginning. We don't want to be one of those districts who has this beautiful field and then 2 years later it's collapsing inside of itself. So the best thing we can do is make sure that the bidders know our expectation, and then we study them and to make sure that they weren't one of those ones who installed something that was faulty.
Product themselves, there's 3 different companies that we're looking at for the product. And then they each list schools, or even bigger than schools, colleges, and I think one of them
Was professional.
Field, yeah.
Yeah.
And then so probably a contractor be qualified to put in their product, but then it does go to bid, and then you kind of are liable on the lowest bidder unless you fight some of those battles.
Lowest responsible bidder.
Yes, yes.
The other thing that we've done in order to protect ourselves, which is really protecting the whole project, the contractor, the architect, the client, us, our community, is to do a lot of testing beforehand. So a lot of the testing of the soils, the testing of the water table, a lot of that testing is required to be done, but we've said that we know that's a low point, and so we better do some additional testing. A lot of that's already been done by professional testing. I don't know, was it PSLA or somebody like that? PLSA that's came in and done those. And then all that information is generated and provided to the architect and engineers. So that will be helpful as well.
Good question. Okay, we're getting to the end of the presentation. This slide summarizes the fee schedules that are in the back of your notebooks. We are not increasing our certified sub rates. This year, 190 sits really very competitive in the valley for sub rates. So we are remaining at the same amount. The other ones you can see there, we've got very little change from prior years. So those are in the notebooks as well. We also have our citizens guide, and Stephanie has just done a tremendous job with this document. She's the one that created it. She's updated it again for us, and Kevin and I have reviewed it in detail. This gives really, if you want to learn more about the budget, it puts it in layman's terms. It's a really good document to open up and read and put it on your nightstand. Sarah likes to do that. Just kidding. And so keep this at the forefront. Also, just put a plug in on our business services webpage on our website. We have tons of financial information. We have all of our budgets for the last 5 years. We have our year-end reports. We have this presentation will be posted by Monday at the latest. And there's just lots of really good information on there. So if you're interested, you can always go out to the website. And if you can't find something, please give me a call. I can show you where it's at.
And for those of you who like have an interest level of going through a presentation like this one-on-one, or you have specific questions about a specific fund or the whole school finance situation in the state of Washington and all that, please know that Chris enjoys doing that. She likes to sit down with community members and take them through that process. Stephanie is very good at it as well. We could have the whole team there if that's of interest. So please know that that's always open. If it's not you, but you hear people in your everyday life that have questions or concerns, don't hesitate to email us or have them get a hold of us, and we can attempt and more often than not answer the question. That may not change the perspective of thing, but at least that question has been answered. So don't hesitate to do that as well.
Okay, lastly, one point that's coming to mind that I didn't make on fund balance. Reminder, when we budget, when you adopt a budget, there's sometimes a projected deficit like this. There's a lot of factors that can change that. We've had prior years where there was a deficit budget adopted and we didn't end up in a deficit position. It's just really key to remind people about that, because sometimes misinformation's communicated out there and then people get the wrong idea. So I just wanted to make that point one more time. And that's it. So if anyone has any questions, any additional questions, we can answer those.
Kevin, is there any, or Chris, is there any, are we trying outreach to increase enrollment? Are we doing anything different to try and make sure that students know that when they qualify for kindergarten? And
yep. We've done a lot of outreach, and I haven't done it, but Irina, principal at the Lentz building, and Lee, assistant principal there, ECAP director, they've done a ton. They've handed out flyers at the grocery store. They put out lots of communication to families. We're still repeating some of that communication out to families in the community to let them know, hey, we're open. We have an online registration system that was implemented 3 years ago. People can just go online and apply and to have their student attend here. So lots of really good things are happening, especially at the real young ages. The new student online enrollment process that we have in place now for families to use, the electronic online version, has been really a good thing for parents. They want to, people want to be online more than filling out papers. So that's been a great thing too.
Yeah, and so we do communicate that our district is open, and at this time it's all grade levels. All right, but and when I mean open, that is from non-residents. Say you live in Natchez, but you may live out in the Weenass, and you just happen to be in Natchez School District, but you'd rather come to Selah, and those scenarios take place. And there's a process you go through in order to make the request. It's called a choice transfer process. These two behind me are very familiar with that. And it gives the district the ability to bring in students that would want to come here for their education, but it also gives us the opportunity to take a look too. And so we are not bringing in students who may have a laundry list of disciplinary issues, or if they're at the high school age and they're not progressing towards meeting graduation requirements. We can we can deny them. So we have the ability to accept and or deny students who make the request to come to our schools. The other thing we've done, and this is the time frame that parents who are making the intent to homeschool their child, and we do have a pretty consistent number of homeschool families that go through the process of filling out the intent to homeschool. And every opportunity we get to explain to them the opportunities for their child here, that doesn't take away from their homeschool experience, because we're not going to get into that. But what we can do is, if they ask the question about, is there anything that I can do to supplement my child's homeschool experience? Then that gives us the opportunity to explain to them, yes, your child has all the opportunities that you want to provide to them that you're maybe not able to provide through your homeschool experience. And that may be simply one class period of a course that they're not able to teach at home. It may be the involvement of them in some of the extracurricular activities that we have available. Usually those come in upper, the fine arts type areas or the athletics, but it does give us the opportunity. And now with our more robust virtual learning platform, that in itself has piqued the interest of some homeschool families. Now, when a homeschool family decides to take advantage of one of those, then we can claim the FTE. Usually it's a small percentage of that FTE, but it does allow us to combine the homeschool experience with a public school experience. The amount of time that we are providing the services to them, we can claim that through our enrollment process. So we're trying to promote that a little bit more as well.
That's great. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the board? And there's also a period of public comment as well.
So that's the Greenways program. That was a question I had. So we get an FTE if we have someone in that program.
Online versus, that's online through Greenways versus homeschool. Homeschool is different.
For certain parents, that's what they're looking for. I mean, the homeschool, there's not homeschool police out there policing everything, but for those parents who want to do it what the law says, they need to be a certificated teacher or be connected with a certificated program for their child. Greenways provides that opportunity for them.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Any public comment?
Thank you.
Can I have you on a mic?
Oh, sorry, thanks.
We can put you up here.
Okay, wherever you need. Anytime I had a question, the next slide had the answer to it.
Awesome.
So if we could go to slide that says general fund impact to fund balance.
On the four-year forecast or below?
Yeah, so you just had it there.
Right there?
So yeah, the forecast, I'm looking out several years, right? We see the $1.5 million reductions per year. So I applied that. I did some quick math, so I could be off here. So I applied 85%, which is typically what we're paying for salaries, right? And so that was 1.275. I divided that by the number that you threw out for a teacher, like 80,000 a year.
Well, we're 95.
95.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like 16 teachers. That's a big number.
Mhm.
And so my question is, how does that compare to our declining enrollment? It seems like we're having to cut more teachers than our student enrollment is declining. How does that compare with what we've gone to the building admins this year and asked them to cut? And it was actually, they came back with an increase of 4.75%. That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So just looking at last year, 23-24 to 24-25, we lost 53 or 54 students. So that's $540,000. So if you think about that, we haven't actually put together an analysis with, okay, just teachers, because we're cutting more than just teachers. There's a lot of other components in the budget that we can look at. There's, of course, classified staffing. and then the MSOCs and such, and look at creative ways to reallocate resources to cover. But, so yeah, that would be, so you're talking 5 teachers, enrollment. So enrollment loss would be like 5 teachers, and what you're talking about so it'd be more of a cut than what we would need for enrollment. Yeah. We're gonna have to cut below the baseline. So when I say the baseline, I mean what the number of staff that the FTE that's driven by the enrollment projection by building, the way that the allocation model that the state uses, we're gonna probably have to go below, cut to a lower FTE than what they're driving. Because they drive an FTE, but we're only funded 80,000 a teacher. Then we're paying 95. So we're probably gonna have to cut below that allocation and probably on the other categories as well, so. But that's a really good question. I'm gonna look at that closer now.
Well, and I would think another issue is gonna be is talk about 30 retirements this year.
Yeah.
And average is about 60.
Between classified and certified
So
and resignations and.
our MSOC's cost is probably comparable to everybody else's groceries and insurance costs. And so
Mhm.
people are having to work longer. So we've never had to riff anybody. We prepare to do it. But facing some of these in the future, we may have to look at that because I think people are gonna work for that extra 3, 4, 5 years with what costs are, what their personal costs are.
Yeah.
And it's gonna then also make our staff more mature, more older, more highly paid, whatever the case is, and we're gonna face some of those issues. So those are things that are probably a little bit of variables, just kind of shooting off the hip, but more variables than we faced prior to this, I would
Yeah.
guess.
Yes, definitely.
Well, and that's assuming that there isn't additional revenue that the state comes up
Right.
with, right? Which is what people are hoping happens. And what Rick just brought up and what Jamie was saying was a question I had, and maybe we've already kind of answered it. Part of it is we don't know, and that's a big thing, right? But the other part of it is that through attrition, it's possible that we keep those numbers without having to riff people, that we hit the 1 point.
Correct. Yeah.
It's possible. It's not a for sure thing.
Sure.
If we're looking at that, oh geez, this is a train wreck of riffs coming. Okay, thank you.
And remember, if we reduce staff, if we have to go out and reduce staff outside of attrition, it goes based on contract, it goes by seniority. So we'd have to go to the bottom of the seniority list and riff up and then call back like our psychologists and people that we have to pull back and then go higher on the list on the riff.
They've got jobs that are costing 60, 65,000 and not that 95, 100, 105,000. So it's more
Well,
people.
psychologists, yeah, they're paid on the teacher salary schedule. Yeah, other questions? This is the biggest crowd we've ever had for a financial budget presentation,
Impressed.
so I really feel I have a warm heart right now. People care.
All right, I will make a motion that we approve resolution 2025-11, the adoption of the 2025-26 budget. Is there a second?
Second it.
Okay, any comments, additional comments or questions for Chris or Kevin? I close the hearing after the vote. Okay, all right, so we will close the hearing. I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution. Is there a second? Great. Any other comments or questions?
Just a quick question. So in regards to that $400,000 that we're looking at, we need to put that somewhere in the budget, or are we okay with just having it in the presentation? That would be my only question.
Well, I'm fine having it just in the presentation because I mean, we know we have to account for it if it doesn't come through. So I'm fine with it just being in the presentation.
All right, all those in favor of adopting the resolution and the 2025-26 budget signify with an aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed with a nay. And abstentions. All right, that is it. So the budget, public hearing on the budget is closed and the resolution passes. And I'll extend my thanks, Chris and Kevin, Chris and Stephanie, especially for the work that you've done on this. That the presentations, after you've been on the board for a while, the numbers start to make sense. I don't know if that's if that's me or your skills, but we really, really appreciate the footing that we're on as a district and the forward thinking that we're doing as a district. It's not all great news, and we appreciate you telling us the news, whether it's good or bad, transparently. And our district's done a great job of that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate, Kevin comes in with 20 years now, 21 years of superintendent experience. And I'll tell you what, it's nice to have him to talk about all this stuff. He's engaged, and it means a lot to me to have a superintendent that's really engaged in the know versus us trying to work out on an island by ourselves. So thank you to him too.
Well, and that experience on both of your behalfs makes me ask another question, I guess, which is, are we talking to our legislators that represent us, or as I know WASDA does, and I know WASA does, I know the WEA does. Are we able to reach out to our local legislators and then impress on them how important this is?
Part of my practice every year is to invite, engage them when they're out of session, ask if they'd like to get together, and I can talk about whatever that they want to know about, and that gives me the opening to share some things that are concerning to us. That's locally. During the session, I work with their staff, because they're really tough to get a hold of unless you plan out and take the trip there. So I communicate with their staff a lot. They're very good at passing on messages with regards to whatever it is that that we're discussing. It goes in waves. Sometimes the communication is ongoing back and forth all the time. Sometimes I won't hear anything for, months at a time, but there is that. And then as a region, ESD has a lobbyist that lobbies on the behalf of all the school districts in ESD. And that person, Melissa Gombowski, is very, very well respected on the Hill among both Democrats and Republicans and the governor's office. So we're in good shape there. I wish that there was more interaction with regards to our local legislature, but I'm not going to press them. I always feel it's important to reach out and try to get them, but that's not. Sometimes it happens a lot, sometimes it doesn't.
Great, thank you. All right, we don't have any student board representatives with us. We're hoping to start thinking about new board representatives. The junior year cycle, I guess, is coming up. We have that to look forward to. We have now item 8 on the agenda, the Associate Superintendent for District Operations Report. Guess what, Chris?
I'll make it quick. Okay, so this is our financial report as of June 25. So we're almost there. 10 months down, 2 to go. July, we'll have July's report next month. We get the county treasurer's report on the 10th. So we're always a month behind on these meetings. But you can see there that we're 83.34% through the school year. We've received 76.8% of our budgeted revenues. Part of that is we were shorted by OSPI on our June apportionment intentionally. They made that up in the apportionment that we just got for July. So we'll catch up there as well. And then on the expenditure side of things, we've spent 80% of our budgeted appropriations. So we're really in good shape with that compared to where we're at in the school year. So we're still on target for where we think we're going to be, landing at around 10.5 million at the end of the year. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. Any questions for Chris on the financial status update? Move on to item 9, the superintendent report.
Excuse me, 3 just event date things, just a reminder, more so just for the public. Next board meeting, there is not a study session within the August month. So the next time the board will gather will be on 8/28. That's a Thursday, same place, same time. 2 other things, most importantly, our first day of school for the 25-26 school year is Monday, August 25th. That is traditionally the week that students are in session Monday through Thursday, and then enjoy a 4-day weekend, then come back on the following Tuesday. Also of interest maybe for the board and the public, we traditionally do a all-employee welcome back gathering at the middle school. It's the one opportunity that all of our employees, regardless of what position they hold with the school district, are all in one place at one time a year. And that is on the 19th of August at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that is it for my report.
And on, thank you very much, Kevin. Board communications, is there any board communications this evening? We got a quiet one for this evening. There are a few things to sign as they're coming through. Oh, this is the budget one, and there's a folder there, and make sure you get that signed up. There's no executive session needed for this evening, so we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming.